on the screen.
Yeah, so typically, there's no one else on the topic about finance.
Are you ready?
But
And I'll order the regular town council meeting Monday, September 16th, 7:05 p.m. Roll call.
Preble,
Here.
Grisanti,
here,
Candy Davis,
yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Paul Davis,
Yes.
Burdick,
Here. Seven pledge of allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Meeting notice was posted on Friday, September 13th at the library, the city hall, the post office, and the website.
Thank you. Also acceptance of agenda.
Motion to accept.
A second. Motion a second to accept the agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Personal appearances. Anyone in the audience that wishes to speak against on the agenda? Okay, we'll move on to the minutes from September 3rd.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
From the second to approve the minutes, any corrections or additions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Committee reports, finance, Tim.
Finance met earlier this evening. I will make a motion to approve change order number 2 for RT Fox for the Quigley Street Utility Improvement Project in a credit in the amount of $18,671.19.
I'll second.
Motion a second to approve the change order for RT Fox. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Shaw,
Yes.
Preble,
Yes.
Grisanti,
Yes.
Candy Davis,
Yes.
Paul Davis,
Yeah.
Burdick,
Yes. Motion passes.
I'll make a motion to approve the final pay request for RT Fox for the Quigley Street Utility Improvement Project in the amount of $11,375.
I'll second.
Motion a second for the final pay request. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Shaw,
Yes.
Preble,
Yes.
Grisanti,
Yes.
Candy Davis,
Yes.
Paul Davis,
Yes.
Burdick,
Yes.
Motion passes.
Make a motion to approve bills and payroll in the amount of $334,445.35.
Second.
Motion second to pay the bills. Any questions on the bills? Hearing none, roll call.
Shaw,
Yes.
Candy Davis,
Yes.
Grisanti,
Yes.
Preble,
Yes.
Paul Davis,
Yes.
Burdick,
Yes.
Motion passes.
Make a motion to approve the event packet for the Edgerton FFA Alumni Pork Chop Dinner on September 27th.
Second.
Motion second to approve the event packet for Edgerton FFA. All right, any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Shaw,
Yes.
Candy Davis,
Yes.
Grisanti,
Yes.
Preble,
Yes.
Paul Davis,
Yes.
Burdick,
Yes.
Motion passes.
Make a motion to approve the funding for an additional Badger book from the city of Kenosha in the amount of $1,000.
Second.
Motion second to approve the funding for additional Badger book. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Shaw,
Yes.
Candy Davis,
Yes.
Grisanti,
Yes.
Preble,
Yes.
Paul Davis,
Yes.
Burdick,
Yes.
Motion passes.
Make a motion to approve Munibit as a vendor for website developer and hosting.
Second.
Motion second to approve the vendor for website developer and hosting. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Shaw,
Yes.
Candy Davis,
Yes.
Grisanti,
Yes.
Preble,
Yes.
Paul Davis,
Yes.
Burdick,
Yes.
Motion passes.
Make a motion to approve Cargill as the lowest responsible bid for our salt bids in the amount of $79.89 per unit per ton.
Second.
Motion second to approve the salt bids. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Shaw,
Yes.
Candy Davis,
Yes.
Grisanti,
Yes.
Preble,
Yes.
Paul Davis,
Yeah.
Burdick,
Yes.
Motion passes.
And then I'll make a motion to approve the temporary Class B beer licenses for Edgerton Chamber of Commerce for the Edgerton Night Markets on September 20th and October 18th.
Second.
Motion second to approve temporary Class B beer licenses. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Shaw,
Yes.
Andy Davis,
Yes.
Chrisanti,
Yes.
Kribel,
Yes.
Paul Davis.
Yeah.
Burdick.
Yes. Motion passes.
That's everything from.
Thank you. Library board.
Okay, Beth is ill tonight, so being on that committee, we approved revisions to the meeting room policy. And, Beth shared with us the 5-year strategic plan for the library. So.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Parks and Rec.
Yep, Parks met on Monday, September 9th. Committee approved soccer shed upgrade. So they currently have a shed, soccer program has a shed out there. And they want to build a bigger one. And building it with solar, so we approved that and they're building it at their own expense. Kudos to them. We continue to talk about possible skate park at Racetrack Park, kind of by the railroad tracks. But we're still working through a few things on that, so but that's soon to come. We talked about the 2025 budget, which we'll go over the wish list a little bit later tonight. And the only other thing was tobacco that we had somebody from Tobacco Days that represents Parks Committee. And they had reported that the tent, that white tent that they used and the new bathrooms worked really well. So yeah, good feedback from Tobacco Days. And that's it for parties.
Thank you. Utilities.
Utility met last Monday. Nothing too major to do a bankruptcy write-off for 10 West Street. Also did consider awarding a bid for the roof at the treatment plant left station. Just to replace nothing improvement like that.
That it?
Yep.
All right, thank you. Next item is to consider introduction and first reading of the City of Edgerton Ordinance 24-14, ordinance to amend chapter 167, alcohol beverages, section 167-4C, SC wine of the Edgerton Code of General Ordinances, City of Edgerton, Rocket Dean Counties, Wisconsin.
Can you remind me what this was
Yeah.
specifically about?
Yeah, Wendy's the resident expert. It's a law change at the state level, and so your ordinance should reflect the law. Although one thing I did want to note is that before a wine license had to be a restaurant, 50% of the revenue from restaurants. The state took that provision out. You can keep that provision. This ordinance gives you a choice. If you want to make that more restrictive than the state law, you can continue to have that provision in your local ordinance. But we want to bring your attention to the fact that the state law has now changed, where before it was dictated by the state. And I want to make one other note about the ordinance. You'll see, as you look through the ordinance, you see there 2 and 3 are being suggested to be removed. That means there was a 1. So staff took out the 1. It was in like the 5th line down. And we didn't note to you that we had taken it out, but it did exist in the original ordinance. Only if, and there was a 1 there. And we erased it instead of putting a line through it. So if you want to make these changes, this ordinance matches the state law now. If you wish to continue to require that wine license holders have a restaurant, meet the definition of a restaurant, you may do that. We checked with the state and you can be more restricted.
So any store could put in a wine license, insurance office, flower shop.
Yep. They do have to follow the same laws. If they're a licensed establishment, they have to follow the closing hour laws. They have to follow the laws as to who's allowed in their store, unsupervised, that kind of thing. Even if they're not selling alcohol, they still have to follow those laws. So they would have to, they're restricted to follow the same laws as anybody with a Class B license. Any bar would have to follow when it comes to underage kids in their facility.
Is this one where we have autonomy to make approvals or not approvals?
Yes, it's same, it would come before you. If somebody did apply for a Class C wine license, it would come before you, just like every other liquor license.
And are there only certain reasons why we can deny, or we can
Same as
deny?
the other alcohol
Same as the other
license,
ones.
yes. But you have to keep in mind that if you deny one for one reason, then you have to use that same consideration for every license, so I would say, whatever restrictions you put on that license now, you just have to make sure you're being fair to everybody.
What's the cost? It's
It's $100 a year for a wine license. We do have I don't know if I can tell you this right, but I mean, we do have an application for a wine license right now. They're still in their 15-day waiting period, so it won't come to you until the first meeting of October. So whatever you decide tonight will determine whether that comes forward or not.
Are you looking for us to define the restrictions or
If you-
parameters now? I mean, some of that. What we, when I think of everything we think we might want.
Well, you have to, if you're going to put any restrictions on the license, I suggest you do it now. Because if you issue a wine license under no restrictions and then later on you restrict it, it's gonna be very difficult for you to not renew that wine license come renewal time under the new restrictions.
Can
So,
somebody give an example, I can't, of what a restriction could be?
well, you could still restrict it to restaurants like
Well,
it
right,
used to
I'm
be.
just saying, assuming we are going to do something different.
I guess that would be at your discretion. I mean, if you want to restrict how many we have, if you want to restrict what types of businesses, I guess,
That's a hard question to answer.
It is.
It's really wide open.
it is very, because you,
It is.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's your goal.
But that's the
It's a
point.
long time, Paul. What do you think are reasonable?
We haven't decided, we haven't.
Well, I guess I'm just thinking like,
Australian wine.
I'm still trying to figure out why
Yeah.
the mayor's first example was an insurance office.
Michelle. Now let's speak the flowers.
Fair enough. I guess I was always thinking that it would be held by businesses that do sell other types of food and beverages. Not,
but now you
know,
have your, like,
But then again, I could also see like a flower shop or.
Right.
That
You have
seems
your-
to kind of go well
you
together.
have your
too.
beauty salons that want to serve a glass of
Oh,
wine when
right.
you get a
Mhm.
haircut.
You
You have your, crafting stores like
Right.
Rubbish Restyle, they
Yeah.
do art classes and they wanna do those sip and
Oh.
paints. I mean, you have all those different types of businesses and it's up to you folks if you would like to license those types of businesses or if you wanna restrict it. Basically, I asked the Department of Revenue, we can make the license more restrictive, we just cannot contradict what the state statute says.
Is there a limit, like with the other license, like the hard liquor, or do we have a limited number? of
We do
these?
not.
Okay.
We can
But
if
we
you choose
could.
to, but we currently do not have a quota on wine licenses, no.
How many wine licenses have we issued?
One. One wine only, yeah, just one,
These are really, we're talking about consumption on premises,
correct,
not packaged wine.
no. I mean, for the most part,
So,
yes,
does the wine have to be sold to the people there, or it could be part of the evening?
sold by the glass.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay.
You can recork it according to the state statutes if they don't drink the entire bottle. Just like at a restaurant, if you don't drink the entire bottle, you can recork that bottle and send it home with that person.
Okay.
Same thing at a bar, you can buy a bottle of wine at a bar. But for the most part, these people wanna be able to sell it by the glass while you're doing your painting class or
Okay.
whatever you're doing.
Okay, so I have a question.
Mhm.
Does it have to be sold?
But you don't have to have a liquor license if it's not sold.
But you can have wine on premise.
You can, but sold is a very broad term in the eyes of the Department of Revenue. It doesn't mean that money exchanges hands, so if you include the cost of a glass of wine in the cost of the haircut, then you're selling it.
I guess that's what I was wondering, but that's not what we're here to determine. I just, right, is that if somebody wanted to say, and I like the, let's say the paint night.
Mhm,
Somebody wants to come in and do a paint night
mhm.
and part of their fee is, hey, free wine.
There's the key word is fee. If they pay any money for it, for the paint night. So if I had you over to my house and I said, let's paint a picture and have a glass of wine, you don't have to have a license for that, but as soon as that person pays you for that,
But they're not saying they're paying for the wine.
but they're exchanging
They're
money
paying for
and
the-
there's.
Yeah, event. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
I think we should reduce or remove the restaurant. I like the ability for somebody to.
So do I.
I agree.
A line and do it,
Too.
so let's go with what the state says, and we won't keep it more restricted.
I've always wanted a glass of wine when I go in and order flowers, so.
Okay, so one more
Buying
question.
shirts.
It's a annual license, right? And what does it cost?
$100.
Okay, so somebody could come in for an annual license, and they have it for the year.
Same as every other liquor license, yes.
Okay.
Or while you're waiting for your paint to be shaken.
Can't take it.
Oh, he's gonna have a blast with it.
Well, we're still doing background checks on these.
Yeah.
Yes, same as every other liquor license, it's the same process to apply for a wine license that it would be for a class B or a class A.
Chief, you don't see any red flags here? Hey, then.
Can you confirm that the first reading, if I approve it, it's approved without that stipulation? So the restaurant stipulation is already removed.
That's what this ordinance suggests, is that language is to be removed from the ordinance.
So I will make a motion to approve the first reading of City of Edgerton ordinance 2414, ordinance to amend chapter 167 alcohol beverages, section 167-4, C, class C wine of the Edgerton Code of General Ordinances, City of Edgerton, Brock, and Dane Counties, Wisconsin.
I'll
Second.
Like that.
Motion and a second to approve first reading of City of Edgerton ordinance 2414. Any further discussion?
Well, before I'll say it again, you turn it into Dodge City, can I tell you? Good. Dodge City, no.
No further discussion, roll call.
Shaw,
Yes.
Grisanti,
Yes.
Preble,
Yes.
Andy Davis,
Yes.
Paul Davis,
Yes.
Burdick.
Yes.
So what does sake fall under? Is that a wine or is that a?
I think that's a hard liquor.
Yeah.
It's not.
I don't even know what that is.
It's Japanese.
Japanese what?
Right,
Average
right.
license plates that don't have.
I have to see what it's made out of,
Makes
because
a
I
hell
don't
of a
know.
Bloody Mary, I'll tell you
Oh,
that.
all
It
right.
tastes like crap by itself.
Right, wine? Oh, but it's a wine. If it's fermented like a wine, if it's in the process of a wine, I would guess it would be a wine. I don't know. If you really want to know, I can find out for you.
Well, you can define wine versus liquor. We may not be able to
Right.
say it right now. but
It's
there is
the
a
way that
definitive-
it's processed, basically.
Yeah, there is an actual distinction we could
Mhm.
find out of.
For the next meeting, we can find that out. Okay, did I say that fast? Motion
It
passed.
did, yes.
Next item is consider City of Edgerton Resolution 2324, resolution requesting exemption from Rock and Dane County Library Tax, City of Edgerton, Dane and Rock Counties, Wisconsin. Something we've done how many years here?
Bill Morgan made some modifications, so that's what the next piece of
Yes.
paper is in front of you, so that's the one here.
I'll
We have a moment.
I'll make a motion to approve.
second.
Motion is second to approve Edgerton Resolution 2324. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Candy Davis,
Yes.
Preble,
Yes.
Grisanti,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Paul Davis,
Yes.
Burdick.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item is consider approval of the 2025 joint powers agreement with Rock County 911 Communications. Another annual thing we deal with here.
Second.
Motion is second to approve the 2025 joint powers agreement. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Burdick.
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Paul Davis,
Yes.
Candy Davis,
Yes.
Grisanti,
Yes.
Preble,
Yes. Motion passes. And the next item is to consider request by Opulence LLC to assign development agreement for 116 Swift Street to Florentine Legacy LLC.
So moved.
Well, I'll second it, but I actually have a question about what does this actually mean for us?
Yeah. Motion and a second to approve the request by Fabulous.
Now,
Further discussion.
now, thank you.
This is not unusual, where a developer comes forward, starts a project, obtains a development agreement, negotiates the deal, and then when they move into the development and the ownership phase, in this case, the condo, so they'll be out of it in the end, there is another LLC form that is, and my question to the developer is it the same people? Yes. So it's just a different LLC than the one populates in the broader umbrella. So this is not unusual.
Thank you.
So if we had any issues, we would go through the new place, not Populous.
Our agreement will be with.
However, if they pick up
Florence,
sticks and take off, then we're back to Populous having to finish the contract with somebody else.
No.
We would have to
whole
go there.
agreement would be assigned to Florentine.
So we would have to go to Florentine if they went belly up or something.
It is, most developers will have a umbrella organization, and then as they do each individual development, it's tied to, you know, like an address oftentimes, or in this case, it's, I think it's going to be called the Florentine, condo association, so that's why they fixed that. It's a convenience for them more than anything, that's the point. But there's no reason to.
It's one and the same.
And is one of the same, and our agreement says that assignments shall not be unreasonably refused, so. I had no objections to it.
And there's no additional risk, right?
There's no additional risk. They still have to meet all the other criteria that we put on Populous.
Thank you.
And that lot is owned by, that easement goes through. Who would own? Is that currently the IKI property?
Currently, yes, the city is not taking title to it.
Okay. So that was the IKI city to them. This is not, we're not granting any easement to.
Well, first, we're not to the easement yet, this is the agreement.
Oh,
Yeah, this is the assignment of the agreement.
No, they're back from the same presence. Yeah.
Any further discussion? And none, roll call.
Burdick,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Paul Davis,
Yes.
Andy Davis.
Yes.
Crisanti,
Yes.
Kribel,
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item is to consider release of access easement at 116 Swift Street.
Oh, Sean, did you have a question?
I'll make one joke for
I'll second and I'll ask who,
You have to make the motion.
oh, I didn't make, I thought the motion
I
was made.
heard a motion here.
I thought he made it, and I thought you were, I was waiting to see if somebody else said second. I thought.
I didn't actually hear the one.
I will,
Hey, let's start over, pledge of allegiance.
So moved.
so Sean made the motion, and are you seconding it, Jim?
Oh,
sure. I thought I had the
floor,
I I don't even know.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay,
Now I'll ask my question. This easement area, who owns that property right now?
It's all part of IKI's property. And it's, so when we have, for the little time that we will own it, in between the time when we take it from IKI and transfer it to Florentine LLC.
Hmm.
In that time period, since we are owners, we can clean up all these easements that exist there. So that this is the example of one of them that existed from the school had reserved. So we're gonna try to clean all this stuff up so that it isn't sitting out there.
So that means what? It means that, whose is that going to be?
The easement goes away, the easement shown on page 20.
It will go away.
Yep, but there will be a new one.
Okay,
Page 19 is the area that will replace that easement, that will continue to be a public access easement to allow
I
the
see.
public
Okay.
traversal of that parcel.
okay, got it.
Tri-County will also have to agree to these provisions, because this easement that you see on the page in 19, it goes right through Tri-County's property also, so we'll be approaching them to get this cleaned up also.
Okay,
And there's always confusion.
Yeah.
That the parking lot behind there, that the library, most people park for the library, isn't actually the library. That's all around the community center and what is now, or the child school, right?
Right.
And this doesn't change that.
Right.
But everybody's an understanding that these stalls that are being shown were good, that the library is gonna be more or less used.
Yes, that easement is where it says PLE, permanent limited easement area on page 19. Those are the stalls that will be not restricted, cannot be restricted by the developer. We as the city will be putting that easement in the 2 minutes that we own them, not literally, but in the very short time that we own it.
Yep.
We will be recording that easement to ensure that the public will have access to those parking stalls for the use of our library patrons as one of the last easements. So it's very similar agreement, it's configured differently.
Thank you.
What we're doing is authorizing the fact that we're going to be able to do this.
Right, because we're gonna be doing this all very quickly, we're not gonna have meetings in between, we want to take care of all this authorization so that the mayor can sign what he needs to, and that's the hot second.
How long is a hot second? How long can actually?
The hot second will probably be 24 to 48 hours, depending.
Oh, that is a hot second.
Well, you know, we'd love to do it the same day, but we have to record documents, get recording information and reflect that on other documents, and so it's probably not gonna happen the same day, but if we could, we would.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Kribel?
Yes.
Paul Davis?
Yes.
Burdick?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Andy Davis?
Yes.
Grisanti?
Yes.
Motion passes. And the next item is to consider authorization to accept the donation of 116 Swift Street to fulfill the obligation of the development agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to accept the donation of 116 Swift Street. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Andy Davis?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Paul Davis?
Yes.
Burdick?
Yes.
Grisanti?
Yes.
Kribel?
Yes.
And motion passes. Next item is to consider approval of the transfer of 116 Swift Street to Florentine Legacy LLC upon receipt of the property.
No move. Second.
Motion and a second to approve the transfer of 116 Swift Street. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Kribel?
Yes.
Burdick?
Yes.
Paul Davis?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Andy Davis?
Yes.
Grisanti?
Yes.
Motion passes. Okay, we'll skip the next item, we'll mail.
Well, number 17, I'll take that.
Next item is 2025 budget and capital improvement plan.
Okay, page 21 and most of, I think, everything that follows are all related to, the beginning of the budget process. So for, as a reminder, and for anyone new at the budget process, the first discussion about budget is really the capital plan, are those big capital items, equipment, and projects that that are in the budget and how we finance those. So, there's kind of a summary, hopefully you've had a chance to look at it, so I won't read it to you. I will note a few of the assumptions, because I think it might be helpful for anyone who's relatively new to the budgeting process here, because we have some ongoing assumptions that we have been using for a while that might be helpful in trying to wrap your head around how all of this works. So the one thing to keep in mind is that last year this year, there was a significant increase in shared revenue to cities. And this council said, you know, it's gonna go for roads. And so what the capital plan in here is using that assumption. You have no obligation to do that. Know that if you have other things you think you need to spend that money on, that is your choice. But when staff put this forward for you to review, we're basing our assumption on the fact that the majority of that, you know, we're gonna use our money we always budgeted and we're gonna put the rest of it toward roads. We're going to maintain at this point, the around $600,000 annual payment that we make in debt service. If you want to do more projects and there aren't other funds available, you could borrow more money. We have a significant amount of borrowing capacity. That's not to say that you should go ahead and do that, but legally we are at a very, very low debt level. So, but that is, again, this projection is based on that assumption that you want to stay right around $600,000 in. This doesn't include anything regarding the fire district. We don't have enough information to even consider what the impacts are, so that will all be part of the fire district presentation to the community at some point. There are some assumptions.
Sorry, it did nothing, so we didn't even bring forward what last year was. and use that as a placeholder?
Oh, their operating expenses?
Yes.
Clearly would be part of the
Okay.
budget, but the capital plan that they have and the ensuing
I
operating
confused them. Thank you very much, sorry.
things that would follow these expansions, none of that is in
Yeah,
here.
sorry.
So when we talk about what happens with when we levy for them, so that impacts what you levy. But we just don't have, we don't know when, we don't know how much, so just so we're clear.
Now that this is capital, I was thinking operating.
Yeah, okay. And then I just noted a few things about some grants, for projects, who knows, we apply and apply and apply, and sometimes we receive them.
I have a question about that, because it says we will not receive grant funding for IKI.
Yeah,
Does that mean we were turned down?
twice.
And what is it that's keeping us from
you know,
getting it?
It's a statewide competition.
Oh, okay.
I sat on the reviewing board for that one before we applied in the last few years, when obviously I can't participate then. But the league appoints a municipal person, I sat on that board, and my experience is there's an algorithm that the DOT staff uses and presents it to the committee, made up a whole bunch of representatives from towns and cities and villages. And I think that algorithm puts a significant amount of weight on the average daily traffic of the road. If it's in a big city and it's serving 60,000 cars a day, those projects move up, and I get it, the DOT wants to get the most for their money, right? So, Howard is looking at traffic counts on IKI Drive, because they seem, based on the data that DOT has in our grant application, not even in the ballpark. So he's investigating our ability to get a traffic counter and have the state accept our traffic counts. So in the next round, when we apply again, because we'll just keep applying until the road has to be repaired.
Right.
Then to see if that number will help us with our traffic counts. But it's a road that we think has all of the makings for a really good grant application.
Well, and I get the when you talk about the amount of vehicles, but is that amount of vehicles percentage or whatever for that community, or is it just a high number? Because if we were to look at that road, it's a very high number of people in this community that take that road, I think because of the school, going to school, and because of IKI and the park.
Oh, no question, right? That's why I think the numbers they have, the counts are, if you took a count on a certain day.
3rd of July.
Yeah.
Right, yes.
Right, Saturday morning.
Saturday morning.
So those are the things, they're such a
Okay.
huge, and so the counts they have are so low, they probably took them on a day when there's nothing going on. in the
I
park.
see, okay.
So
Okay,
we're gonna see if we can get better traffic counts to count in their data, and then we'll apply again, and we'll just
Okay.
we apply for all of these things as many times as, until we have to fix it.
because it's underneath too, that would need to be fixed. correct?
Yes, I mean, this carries a lot of heavy traffic, farm traffic and IKI, and,
There's no super.
no sewer water.
Oh, no, sure, right.
Just a base.
Yeah,
So how many hundreds of thousands are we talking?
800,
Okay,
it's huge. Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna borrow 1.5, your next borrowing, 800 is IKI.
could we, so when do you know every year about the grant?
It's every other year, so I think it'll be application next year again. And at this point, we can't afford this project until we've got it scheduled now for 27?
If, maybe this is the time to talk about it, but maybe, another time that whatever that reconstruction we did on Stone Road, if it's not, I mean, if we know that this grant can't be done for, let's say we don't think we'll get the grant for 5 years. Could we do something like what we did on Stone Road?
The mill and overlay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's an engineer's question. If the base is insufficient, which I'm suspicious that it is, given the condition of the road and given the amount of truck traffic and turning truck traffic at IKI. So far, the engineers have said you need a reconstruct, not a mill, because that mill and overlay I mean, it's a nice street, I'm not complaining, it's
yeah.
It is a Band-Aid,
Okay.
it will not last.
Well, Jim, I'm putting that on your plate to see what because we gotta do something. Okay, thank you, sorry.
I mean, in all seriousness, if that is your priority, then we just push other projects off and you put, whatever, 150 or 200,000 into a mill and overlay, knowing that you're gonna be back at it in 5 or 7 years. Okay, so those are the assumptions. I'm trying to make this brief. We have, a borrowing in 2027 is our next scheduled borrowing. It'll be 1.5 million. That's obviously some assumptions in there, but that keeps you right around that 600,000. TIF 6 and 7 closure will produce, if the council elects to charge those two districts, the interest owed, it's a significant amount of funds. You could charge that at any time. At this point, those TIFs are both, we loaned them, the city has loaned them money, so it would really make not a lot of sense to have that paid off, because they're just gonna borrow the money unless you send it to the bank to get the money. Now's not the time to probably do that. So, but there will be in your capital plan moving forward, assuming it all goes as planned, there will be a significant amount of interest payment back to the city that is your discretion as to how you wish to spend it. That could be for capital projects or roads. The capital surplus fund is the money that is created in the general fund every year. If there's a surplus, we move that to the capital projects fund, where you then use it for capital projects. The amount of funding there is available, about $450,000 right now. It's used in the, as we probably noted. If you want to move projects around, this is our time to talk about priority projects such as IKI. Note that if some projects you want to do have street or have utility work underneath, this is all married with the utilities plan for their 5-year plan and their borrowing and their rates. So know that some streets have utility infrastructure underneath that would have to happen. We just have to, move everything around.
Washington Street.
Yeah, I can move it because of what's happened there. It got moved up a year. And the library furnace is, I don't have a lot of details on that. It has been on the list for a couple of years. It is not in this plan. It's a big number. And we have to certainly do some research, but I think that is something that we need to probably figure out how we're gonna do that. Okay, so there's a couple charts here that, the one on 23 is the one you typically see, which is a lot of words. It's kind of, I think, a dense thing to kind of interpret personally. So we tried a new graphic on 2024. So we'll go to that for conversation. Certainly, I'm happy to talk about that other spreadsheet on page 23. So this lays out the, I don't have two. Did you get color? Oh, no one's got color packets, but did you look at it on when it was emailed to you? They're all colored.
Or you can kind of tell the
Okay,
difference.
good.
I think.
Okay.
The grades are different.
Okay. Okay, so then you can see, I'll just point out a few things and then we can just talk about all of the, whatever you want to move around, and we can start our research on things if you want to change things. The light colored bottom bar that kind of goes on the $260,000 all the way across, that's your $260,000 of your traditional street money and the shared revenue money that went into it. So every year, as we talked about, right now we're saying we're going to reserve that money for streets. Again, you don't have to do that. If you find the library furnace or other things are a higher priority, you have the ability to do it. We're following your direction in conversations regarding that shared revenue and levy money. So let's go to 2025, and I can maybe, if an explanation, hopefully will make it clear as what we're showing. So of the $260,000, we'll call it levy money. Every year levy money. We have money for crack filling in 2025. We have money for the second phase of Albion Street, because at the top of that bar is the darker color. 2025 is the last of the money we borrowed in 2022. If Albion Street bids come in good, then this money that we're using in the levy money, we won't have to spend on Albion. It will be available for other streets. Until we bid, we don't know. Our best estimates right now is that we would spend the rest of our borrowed money and we would have to use some of the 260 to finish the Albion Street project. And then additionally, we have Washington Street in there in the part of that 260. So what we're trying to do right now is carry us from our last of our 22 borrowing to get us to the 2027 borrowing by using some of that levy money for the 2026 Washington Street project. That's the big project in 2026, like Albion Phase 2 is in 2025. Washington is the street that is now in 2026. We don't have enough funding in 2026 to make it all work, so we're going to take some of our money in 2025, carry it into 26 to get that Washington Street project done. So I'll go to 2026 and then maybe stop and see if everybody kind of understands how this chart works. Again, 2026, we have $50,000 for crack filling. Howard may not need all of that. He makes that decision each year, meets with this committee, talks about what kind of has to get done, and then there may be another small street that gets done if he doesn't need to do a lot of crack filling and, chip sealing. There's a pool painting in there. We haven't bid that. This is probably based on last time, about every 5 or 6 years, Ian, we paint.
A lot longer than that.
Okay, longer than that.
Doesn't seem that long. Wasn't it Van Horn that did it last?
No, it was, Ron. He's the historian guy. He goes on, he like restores churches and things. I can't remember his last name. I had his son in school.
Wasn't that long ago when it was being done.
Yeah.
It's been a while. Van Horn was the time before.
So pool painting is snuck into the 260,000. Again, your call as to how you want to fund these things. It's gotta happen. The health department at some point says you gotta do it. And so we've got to find a place for that. We have used part of the road money for that. Washington Street is, as you can see, part of that 2026 levy money. And then there is, capital surplus to finish off the Washington Street project. So that again is that money that if there is a surplus created in the general fund, we move it to the capital projects fund. That's at 450,000. That's that money. And this is all, otherwise, if we don't do these kind of, I'll say, unusual ways to fund Washington, we have to wait until we get the 2027 borrowing to do anything. So we're trying to, use pieces to put that piece together, because we always try to do one big street project a year. And then the 2027, you can see the Gear Tower Artisan Streets. That's that grant we got. So this is our share of the grant to resurface all of those roads out there. And then the PD parking lot, the color of that is TIF. That is absolute discretionary. It's been on the list for a while. That TIF district is the new TIF district in the downtown, is its source. I think the RDA would certainly have an opinion about spending money on something that isn't generating increment early on in the life of the TIF. We usually don't do that. But I think we put it in now to say it's a TIF eligible expense, but when we get to that point, we can look at it and see what that TIF district looks like. We usually are pretty conservative on our TIF districts and don't spend a bunch of money on projects that aren't going to turn around and produce increment to pay back. I'll stop there. And then we can go to any of the other years and any other details. Is this chart a useful chart? If there's some other way we can explain it to make it more clear, I'm happy to try to do that. We're always looking for mechanisms to kind of describe what's happening.
One, people do this many times and forget all the time. So when would walking through 10th Street actually be done?
26.
It would actually be done in 26, not just part of the, because I'm thinking like, the Salvage Street you're talking about is the higher up part, right?
Second phase next year.
Second phase, right?
Correct.
So this Salvage Street was in the 24.
24, correct.
And that was in the 25, right? And I can just keep going back by it all, and people that came off Washington Street and by, it was like keep telling them it's gonna be another 2 years. Having all that flooding. Which wasn't always like just Washington, it was always like First Street too, if I remember the whole.
Yep, and we had it's been various places downtown over the years. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if you switch Albion and Washington, that's an option. You've invested in all the plans for Albion. There is some downstream improvements in Albion that may be helpful to Washington, because Washington is going to get storm sewer. It has no storm sewer now.
Okay.
So when you put storm sewer in Washington, there are some improvements in the Albion Street piece that Washington connects to that will be important to the storm sewer overall design. So there is logic.
I definitely know about Albion, just kind of, it sounded like some of those stories were kind of really hard to hear, that,
Yeah.
all the flooding, it was, for more years, but, okay. Albion Street is super important, so.
I mean, alternatives to doing projects faster are you spend more of your capital surplus, you borrow more money.
Yeah.
So I'm certainly not saying that you can't do projects faster. That would be a hard. You have to look at the rates of utility if you get both Albion and Washington in 1 year, because that's gonna hit the utilities, because it's, that would be big. So we have to go back and run the rates for water and sewer, see what that impact would be. But if that's what you like, we can do that analysis and tell you what the impact is.
No, this is more of a question, though, it wasn't like a startup of plans.
So if I heard you, or if I'm reading it right, we're just, for next year, or for 2025, we're gonna hold off. Let's say 135
Mhm.
of the 260, the extra shared revenue and whatnot.
Mhm.
From 25 to put that towards the 26,
Correct.
which we have another 150 there plus. Above that, we got, what is that?
135.
Yeah, another.
Oh, no, that's actual capital surplus.
Good, okay, I'm going by, I'm trying to go up these
Oh,
states.
I know.
I like to read, but I can't match them close enough to, so that's what, that's. Oh,
That's capital surplus.
Okay, so we didn't have the word, TIF is way at the top, okay.
Correct.
Oh, all right, I see the TIF, yeah. Parking lot, okay. So we're holding off on some next year and then. Some out in the 26th, and you don't only have to capital 135. That's, we've already got the estimate and everything on Washington, or guesstimate.
Yes, guesstimates. Until it's designed, you know, that we're a long way from a real good number because we haven't designed it yet. But, you know, that's based on other bids and the infrastructure we anticipate going in there. That's our best number today.
So we don't have the library furnace in here.
Correct.
Library furnace, would that expense be all the city? Would that be something that the city, the library would use some of their funds in there? How would that work?
They could. That would be a discussion between the library board. They have full discussion over their funds that they have.
Right.
So with the library board in the past, we've shared probably like the meeting rooms. The city paid for half, they paid for half out of their funds. So is that an option? We can talk to the library board about that if the council wants to look at that.
I'm just afraid, because my understanding is that furnace is not in great shape.
Right.
And if this blows up,
Mhm.
next year,
Right.
just like to have, not that we have to put it in the budget, but
Well,
if it happens, then we gotta find a way to.
we probably should
pay for
put it
it.
in the budget.
Right.
If it's
I
that
think it
bad,
should
then
be
we
on-
should.
Yeah, I think it needs to be in, it's just a matter of where the funds come from.
Right, sure.
Yeah, talking with Beth about. Yeah,
Right, so, I mean, if you wish to,
and we do have ARPA funds we have to talk about too.
right,
Would this be an ARPA
Yeah.
eligible?
So to me, it's like, let's make sure we get it paid and then the budget, and then decide kind of how we pay for it. That's, we agree with you, that it needs to be. Needs to be done, put in,
Next page is the ARPA suggestions. Sorry, that's okay.
but the sooner the better, because if it's that bad. You probably want to get it done for winter.
yeah, I think we should be thoughtful about what we put in, so we don't just put in something that, you know, there's a lot of options, but we could probably save ourselves money over time, because that is the next to the wastewater treatment plant, by far the biggest energy user that we have with that library.
So often
efficiency
is probably our need, you had just met, you said,
Oh, we meet once a month, yeah, we just met.
and. But that's something, I suppose, can you have a conversation with Beth to talk with their board or?
I can, I think probably what's more important is that the council has a wish for the library board to participate, you probably should send that message to them. So that, because I can ask Beth, and Beth's gonna say, I don't know what the board's gonna say, what do you know? So if you feel that the library board, I mean, in the past, their funds have gone not for building maintenance things. You know, it's
Okay.
gone for things that make the library a better place to be a library. So
Okay.
that is, you know, that may
Yeah.
be what the board says, but, that doesn't mean that it isn't something that
No.
you can say.
Let's put it in our budget and figure out how to pay for it.
Indeed.
Yeah, but meeting rooms, that kind of stuff, that.
I know if you're not.
Mr. Davis, let's put it in the budget, figure out how we're gonna pay for it.
So of the I guess the objective of this exercise in the capital plan is we're gonna make decisions about 2025. When we do our budgeting process, that's kind of next, tonight also on the list. So is there anything that, you know, that you see in here that, you know, the library is an example, we gotta find a place to put that in, you know, Alderperson Davis is suggesting. Do you have other things that you want moved up or us to analyze, so we can give you information to make decisions.
Well. Other than, I don't know what we're gonna do about that. I guess to me, that's just, I know it's a sore spot with me and a whole lot of other people. I don't know what that means, or if we just.
So,
IPI, right. The street is it's just really bad.
Right now it's for 27.
And I don't think we can go tell them. I mean, what does that mean? Does that mean we're continues to patch or?
Unless you do an overlay, yes.
What? You said the drawbacks to the overlay, like Stoughton Road is, it's only the last 5 years.
Yeah, and I don't know what would be an IKI drive, given the traffic that it, kind of traffic that it has, I can ask you.
Depending on the base that's underneath it.
Yeah, can you at
But it's
least
pretty good
look
base.
at that?
I think that's better than nothing.
Yeah,
Better than
even if
waiting
it's,
3 years.
But it's like $200,000.
I was gonna say,
no,
But
it's $200,000, it's maybe not, the return's not where we want it to be.
right, it would be because it's so much longer.
Well, what did we pay for?
70, I thought, 70 something for the. Am I off based on that?
Something around.
Stoughton Road?
110,
Yeah.
Stoughton Road?
110 between the two, Rollin and Stowe Road.
So maybe
Oh.
200 is a high number, but it
30
would,
something for the Lion Street was all in that contract. 74 for ice.
I thought 70-ish for Stoughton Road would be broken out, but. Can we at least have somebody look into that, just to let us know? Is that even an option, and if so, what would it cost? I guess, Jim, I'm kind of looking at you too, with the heading up that committee.
No.
Yeah.
we would not, that changes our grant eligibility, just so you know. Because once the road is repaired, we're not gonna be eligible, because it'll.
I get that.
It's too.
Oh, even if it's repaired, okay.
Yeah, because it'll get a rating, and the rating goes, there's a threshold, your rating, the road's gotta be bad in order to be qualified. So we can get a number, if you wanna build a number for mill and overlay, for IKI.
And they didn't change the Rollin Street one because that's grants for the underground.
Yeah, the DOT grants are gonna be based on the quality of the road entirely, where the Stoughton Road grant, we're hoping we'll be able to argue when it comes time to argue that the infrastructure underneath is bad and it's serving more moderate income community, therefore the argument's a little bit different.
We won't
take
have that
pictures
argument
before
with
we
that,
serve
yeah.
it,
No,
Cause it's all roads.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't wanna jeopardize the grants.
I don't either, but
Do it really well.
but what do we do between now and then? Maybe that's where my head's going. What do we do to make it doable between now and the grant? Assuming we get the grant.
Drive through town, no.
Yeah. Would it be nice that if I said our drivers are complaining so bad? Here's $500,000 put towards your road. Oh, well, okay.
What else? Anything else in the, I don't wanna rush this along.
No,
certain
let's
things,
go.
if
No.
everyone's understanding what's here,
Yes.
anything you want us to investigate, to change?
Go ahead.
So we talked earlier in public, or with the earlier meeting about the police squad car and the radios and all of that. That doesn't specifically show up here.
If you consider those operating, we buy a car every year, so that's in your operating budget. We always list it in the small capital, and that, when we get to that, that's the last piece of tonight's, is the next year's capital plan. We try not to borrow
To go against
for
that.
those things, so these are things that are big projects that we're borrowing for.
I was just wondering about the status of the pool painting. Is it something that absolutely has to be done by 2026, or can that be?
Yes.
We need to do it.
Okay.
I thought it was gonna be next year, but it's on.
Yeah,
it's 26.
We're gonna try to squeak 2 years out.
Cause your plan would be at the end of the season 26.
Correct.
So that gives us, that buys us more on the next round of, because we've got to do one more season.
That's not operating, we don't just.
60 grand. If we can't, we'll see if it's in the budget.
we just have a big painting party and just look at all the paint themselves?
Oh, and have a glass of wine.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Have a glass of
This is
wine.
true.
Everyone get a part of their house and enjoy it.
It says no dogs too, people ignore that all the time.
Okay, all right, anything else in this that you wish for us to investigate? Okay, so IKI is in the library, there are two things I heard tonight, that we should be looking at, okay. So that's the 5-year capital plan, the next, item in the staff report, here was, ARPA, right?
Yeah.
Take the order. Oh, no, that's, we treated the 5-year capital plan, or excuse me, the 2025 capital budget, probably more related to ARPA's really, a little more, okay. So page 25, this is a schedule for those of you who have been in the budget process here, seen many times. These are the smaller capital items, many of which we try to, well, either they're noted as borrowing or we try to fit them into the operating budget if we can. The committees met this evening, public safety met this evening. I need to talk about the things that are going on in the police department. So those things are that the chief talked about in his capital plan are listed here under police. So, I mean, I can go through each one of these. Howard isn't here this evening. Many of these things that you may have questions about are in his departments. I can try to answer any that you might see on here that you have questions about. I will note the comprehensive plan update. That is a statutory, if you want to continue to do zoning things, you have to have a updated comprehensive plan. Ours is expiring middle of next year, so we need to move on that. That's a number from the planning consultant who has done our planning for us for a long time. That doesn't mean we have to use them, but that's the number that they
When does
provided.
that have to be done by?
It was last adopted middle of 25, it's gotta be next year.
Next
So we gotta
year.
get started right away in the first of the year to make sure we're in good standing.
But if I read right, that, and I don't wanna jump ahead, but that could be an ARPA.
Yeah.
Expenditure.
Yeah.
And we could use one, okay.
So, again, not to take all of your time, hopefully you had a chance to look at this. You certainly will have a chance to talk about this several times before the budget is adopted. Is there anything on here that you have questions about?
When you look under the things for the parks. When we met, these were the things that came up on the Parks Committee list.
And there isn't anything planned for netting or the skate park. We have money for, we think maybe sufficient funds close to it for the skate park this year. So at this point, Howard's still working on details with the railroad and fencing and all of that. So there may be a number that creeps into this, but at this point, we're looking as though we have close to enough funding to build the skate pad.
No, I mean,
Yes,
24, so this way,
correct.
okay.
If we don't get it, I'm going to carry it to next year.
Under general government. Admin staff reduction, should that be a plus 20 grand or what is that?
At this point, we think we're not gonna budget next year for that part-time administrative staff that we budgeted for in City Hall for 2024. We're, as long as if something, the wheels fell off the wagon and we needed that staff position.
Oh, that's why that's in there, in case we need it.
We're saying we're not going to budget for it in 2025. It's a reduction. Sorry if I was unclear.
No, I think I know one that's unclear, I
We
apologize.
budgeted in 24, $20,000. We don't believe that we need to keep our toe in the water, I'll say, for next year. So that would be a $20,000 reduction in operating costs for general government from 24 to 25.
That's what I don't see it in front of
Yep,
me.
you can
It's
make
at
it a
the top.
negative. Sorry,
That's-
yeah.
That's where I get anal about that, I think that's a $20,000 expenditure when I look at it.
Yeah, sorry.
But, okay, that makes sense. That I'm not that I'm pushing for it either way, I'm just
Yes,
understand
here
that.
that would have been more clear had it been in parentheses. And the code enforcement number at 10,000, that's entirely up to you. I mean, we went through $10,000 very quickly
Yeah.
this year. So I think part of that was learning curve, part of that was, we had a backlog, because we haven't been doing anything. And part of it was now we're going to be charging people, and some of that will be a revenue source from the net of 10,000. Are you comfortable with that is really the question.
Yep.
I don't suppose we can do knowing what we know.
Okay. All right, anything else? And if I missed department heads and missed anything, please speak up.
Oh. The Veterans Perk Pavilion, I think that's was regular air, huh?
Yes.
Just listing.
We have nothing on there because, what is that?
We don't have a budget number yet.
Okay.
I think the big question for that one's gonna be the conversation about ARPA,
Okay, got it.
is my guess.
They had whether or not with federal funding. Federal funding,
Oh, we could get federal funding for that through.
We're still waiting on, what's his face?
yeah, they originally said it wouldn't have an answer to them, whether possibly funds.
Oh.
So there's a grant application, and for those of you who aren't
Oh,
following.
yeah, okay. I just can't keep up with all these grants.
Here.
You should be careful when they come in though.
Yeah, we're doing them, right?
It's 400 grand, right?
Yeah,
Should have said, I should have said more, but.
and we're hopeful that we'll have a budget number. We have some people, Fred Falk and team, we're working very hard on really getting a handle on what the actual costs are and what kind of donated or these kind of things.
Got it.
So there's a very qualified person who's helping us at this point, try to
Oh,
put
that's
together
right.
those numbers.
Couple of them actually.
Good.
So the 2025 capital list, all of these things will go into your first draft budget unless we hear otherwise.
Good.
Okay, ARPA. Page 26 and 27. So backstory for those of you who weren't here, all municipalities received, in our case, it was $500,000 in funding, all related to the pandemic and the recovery from the pandemic. And so these funds have been, as time has gone on, the restrictions on them have lessened. And so you have better flexibility than initially when the funds were announced that municipalities were going to get this one. So at this point, we have a little over $200,000 of unallocated ARPA funds. The interest earned so far is $46,000. That interest earned does not have the thumbprint of the ARPA funds. So you can use it for what you wish. It's been invested the whole time earning interest. So that's where that comes from. It's still invested. It will continue. That number will get larger before we spend funds, obviously.
And when do we have to spend the ARPA funds?
They have to be obligated by the end of the year. They don't have to be spent, but they have to be obligated. And the definition of obligated means place orders for property or services, enter into contracts or subawards. So those are we don't have to have it spent, but we have to have it basically decided and under contract.
Yeah, okay.
This year, by the end of this year. We have then 2 years to actually spend it, 2 more years actually to spend it. So that
We spend it right away, we're still earning interest, so we can spend on anything, really.
So the projects completed so far, again, mostly for history for those people who weren't here. We updated our water utility meter reading technology to reduce operating costs. We paid for GIS mapping, and those maps are now live on the city's website, and I think they're super useful. Hopefully other people find them to be that way. We're seeing software for our accounting system. It was a new module. Library meeting rooms, we paid for half of those. We paid for a comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. Those pedestrian lights we talked about earlier in flashing ones. In public safety were funded partially by the ARPA funds. Solar installations, which are all going to be starting soon on 4 municipal buildings. Though that's our biggest expenditure so far. Pedestrian, we had a light that went in at Marlboro. It had to have a ramp. The ramp was paid for, handicap accessible ramp. And then there was fire shortfall funding. In the past, the council has considered when these are one-time funds. So rule number 1 is don't spend this money on something that's a reoccurring cost because you're not going to have this money again. So it's not something that's an operating cost. So the council has been pretty careful about spending it on projects that maybe otherwise wouldn't be funded. Certainly those things related to services around the pandemic, outdoor recreation, those kinds of things are supported by a lot of municipalities as it related to the pandemic. So not operating, anything that reduces operating costs is the distinct advantage of with lead limits, it reduces your operating costs, and there's actually a payback with some of these things, so you kind of get the money back. You know, you spend it once and you get it back over time. And then, of course, anything related to the pandemic. So the chart is a laundry list. Love or hate anything on here, add whatever you'd like. What we need to do is start talking about what your priorities are in making sure this money is taken care of and tied up into contracts by the end of the year. So I'll just go through the list and try to answer questions, and there may be lots of other things you want added or things you don't want to consider at all. Initially, we had 5 solar installations, with the 5th being the wastewater treatment plant. Before we had an actual contractor, we had consultants looking at it, and they felt that the payback, because of various reasons, made that not a good investment. Now that we have a contractor, they provided us with an actual analysis. They have determined that some solar, not to run the whole plant because it's a significant energy user, but there could be a solar installation installed there and it would have a 13-year payback. The cost of the that is $87,000. Lighting upgrades in city buildings, we haven't investigated that at all. It's if anyone who has a facility knows, it's the low-hanging fruit. Everything to LED is an enormous saver. Some of the garages are probably still running, you know, old, 4-foot, if you're interested in that usually has a very quick payback compared to other things. We have not investigated, but would if you said that's something we should investigate. Library furnace, we talked about that. If it isn't funded by ARPA, if the library furnace costs X and a much more efficient library furnace is X plus 5, maybe the 5 is ARPA, entirely your call. And then 165,000, I have nothing, that's what Beth has said, I really don't have a lot to go on. We did get a lot of great information in the energy plan about when we do that, about what we should do to make sure that we get as much efficiency out of it as we can. And that usually costs money to get more efficient equipment. The battery backup at City Hall, we really wanted to do it at the police department, but because then that gives them the resiliency for power outage. But because of the size of the solar array that's going on the building, Alliant has quite frankly, a ridiculous rule that says that we can't do that, or it doesn't make any sense at all. I can go into the details, but the same would apply at City Hall. We put a battery back up here. It provides us, a source of power in the event of a power outage. It also reduces your energy costs because you can charge them up and then drain them down part way every day, and then that reduces your energy costs. Electric vehicle charging station at DPW, probably not the highest priority because there aren't any vehicles in the near term on the capital list that are going to be make sense. The big trucks are still not, they're the electric, they're not really out there in the market to speak of. There's always been a problem with the book drop at the library. It's just an open hole to the outside, and we have to leave doors open and wrap pipes inside of a building. That's how much energy we're losing from the book drop. So there are some solutions to that. No investigation really to speak of that's been done, but that was on the energy plan as something that, you should probably address this and avoid a whole bunch of energy being spent. Parks, the pavilion honoring veterans at Veterans Park. That is, I have a number in there. I totally made that number up of $500,000. I have nothing to go on. The sources of funds for that are a grant application is in. We don't know if it will be funded. It's a federal grant. It's made it through the first round. Is that a fair description of where we are? There's proceeds from the sale of the Veterans Memorial Building on Albion Street. The mayor has long said to anyone who will listen that he'd like to spend that money on that's left, and it's like $120,000 on the pavilion. So that would be another significant expenditure. We don't know what the cost is right now, nor do we know if there's a federal grant. So that's a really difficult one for us to give you any guidance on, but it certainly is one that is a priority for the mayor. You can speak for yourself, but that's my impression. A couple sidewalk projects that are really they're in the capital, the next year's capital plan. They could be developer fees, there are other ways to fund it, but, the dog park has no sidewalk in front of it. And then a sidewalk between South Avenue, South Street. To the soccer park that is in the park in Orchard Heights. That would provide that whole neighborhood access to that park, which would be very nice. And secondly, would also probably alleviate some of the parking demand on Orchard because some people would probably park on South and then walk to go to a soccer game. So we have permission from Alliant Energy for an easement across their property. Comprehensive plan update, which we talked about in the next year's capital plan. And then some, for those of you who follow what the utility's been doing, they've been trying to update to radio read meters, like the new subdivision on Cherry. That's all radio read meters, so they don't walk from door to door. They drive through the neighborhood and it collects all the data. So they pick up all of they've invested in all of the difficult ones, the school system, IKI, all of those that are really hard to get to. So there are certain neighborhoods like the golf course subdivision is probably our next best guess. Those lots are 100 or 120 foot frontage. So it's a ton of walking for the time. So, you know, the utility is always looking for ways to reduce those operating costs. That would be one option for that subdivision at 25,000. That's a ratepayer, you know, that could be a utility expense also. But Howard wanted us to at least put that on the list. All right, I'll stop.
I highlighted a couple of them. Besides the pavilion, which hopefully we can get to 400,000. The lighting upgrades in the city buildings and the battery backup city hall are both gonna save energy, just like solar panels and geothermal here. We got a great donation to put that in, and it's been well worth it over the years. Those both would pay back fairly quick there. And then I did do the 2 sidewalks, mainly because of the parking, all that. Or
Well, you think that should be our, but I agree,
No,
that those 2 should be done. I'm not sure they should be funded by our.
right, it could be park fees, combination.
Sure. I agree.
Same with the wastewater treatment plant, solar, that could be a combination. Cause it's gonna save the ratepayers in the future. Well, pretty much right away, but.
And you have some developer fee money too.
Mhm.
It'd be good to know the next time we look at this, how much of that is available.
That was in the parks packet, 25.
Oh.
I think
I think you're right.
And then the interest that the funds have been gaining, I'd like to see that kind of dedicated towards the pavilion, just in case things don't add up to where we
The
get. 46 right now.
Yeah. Right now.
My thoughts. No, we got one vote that doesn't cover the all right, so.
So direction for us to investigate, taking things off the list, adding things to the list. We really need some time to look into things that require it for those things where we really don't have any idea yet, then that would be what would be most useful. And if some things aren't to be considered, then we will not spend any time.
I know for the library, the book thing, I believe Beth has had to come in and move books around and stuff, so things don't flood or when there's too many books being returned. So that's something we at least look at a number for. Especially if it's losing a lot of energy and we've got to do special things to the building because it's a
Right.
hole in the wall.
Yeah, libraries, what was it, send it back,
Yeah, this.
book return, yeah, I wrote ASAP on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's, we should investigate.
I think, what,
Yeah.
especially if we're gonna invest in a furnace, might as well
Sure.
upgrade the quality of it.
The book return.
Also, same thing, Chris, with the lighting for city hall, or city buildings, I mean, ASAP, investigating ASAP. I scratched the charging station DPWs, is we don't have any idea when we're gonna get.
Right.
So I automatically scratched it, I don't know.
I did too, yeah.
Okay.
I like the radio, meters for utilities. Because that. Plus, doesn't it, register in that gun or something, or
The radio reads, they don't need the gun.
they don't need that, but so there's no individual calculations done either, right?
No.
It really saves.
It pulls them all in as they drive by, the radio ones do, yeah.
It's a good time saver for staff.
It is,
Yeah.
but it's
Well, no.
5,000
Oh.
to get it. Do we think, how much are we paying for?
I mean, if we went to
Yeah.
monthly reading, instead of quarterly, I mean, that's when all of those numbers may start making a lot of sense. But when we run the numbers before for the really expensive technology that's like wired through the phone system and it all just goes to someone's desk. I mean, that payback is forever because we read quarterly. You know, that our staff at a week, they can read. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy work or whatever, but again, if we were doing this on a monthly basis and you had people dedicated to just reading meters, now it pays off. So. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do it because there are places where it really is a huge savings, like IKI, you gotta get someone to walk you around to their 40 meters. So that they're all radio read because now they can just collect them, the school, those are all really great investments. We're now getting into, you know, where some neighborhoods would make sense to do them all at once, change them all.
Well, and are we at the? Can't remember if I done this or not. When new houses are built, aren't those new meters going in?
Yeah.
In the new
It's
subdivision.
In new subdivision?
Yeah, so the utility is investing in those meters
Yeah.
now going forward in whole subdivisions. Putting them in individual houses as we replace meters throughout the city.
Yeah.
Not very cost effective.
Right.
Because you have to, you know, so you got, really makes sense that you're gonna try to do this to consolidate them in areas.
I'm just a big one, anytime you can save staff time with efficiencies.
What is utility then?
Well, I mean, yeah, I agree, it's saving time and.
Have you discussed how it could fit within your budget or anything?
I know, I'm aware of.
Can always
So
spend
this
it.
one,
We did talk about, obviously, when the new subdivision went in, how it
Yeah.
presented its time. We
Right.
don't put it in an old type meter, we know now that we have a subdivision after 10 years, we're gonna start doing this. So the utility commission has been in favor of that, and the meters are more expensive, so that's, you know, being paid for by the ratepayers. So they're supportive of the concept. We haven't really talked about how fast you wanna start changing these out in certain
Retrofitting
neighborhoods.
other ones, yeah.
Certainly the, commission will be talking about their budget, soon.
Cause I think I heard you say that could be a split. That the utility pay for some of it, we pay for some of it, that
Yeah.
25,000.
And we would be ARPA, not taxpayer.
We be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, you could.
The big one's the furnace at the library, if the library board would kitchen bar there, whittle some of that down.
Or maybe they would pay for the book return thing, that's maybe even better. Just get numbers, see.
And then solar for the treatment plant. I'm not even gonna mention the Parks Pavilion because we're getting it 400 grand somehow. They're on $200 they said.
Yep, 211. Without the interest.
Touchy interest.
Well, you can take that 46K, put it somewhere else, earn interest and put it toward paying the pool. He's not listening.
I'm sorry.
So the two items that I'm just gonna, on the list, I think right now for the required investigation that are up for consideration are lighting and the book return.
Yes.
Is there a consensus on those two things that are worth investigating?
So
What else? If the wastewater treatment plant, we should probably decide on that, because that we could just move forward on, because we have a quote from, if you want to accept the contractor's change order, it would be a very large change order for that project. Because that obviously is a big chunk, if you decided to move forward with that, that might change some of things.
So if my math is right, everything that's got numbers here adds up to $383,000.
Except for parts of the building.
I took out the parts.
Got it.
Yes.
Did you take out the sidewalk?
I haven't, no, I added those, but I agree, I think I should take those out. I don't
Yeah.
think those should be ARPA's.
Take them out. Nope.
Like 17. So, 350, 347. So it means we 120, right? You said 211.
211.
So
And like the comprehensive plan update, if we didn't have ARPA, that's part of your budget. I mean, that's, so it doesn't necessarily have to be ARPA. It isn't specific, I mean, it is a, you know, it doesn't have to be ARPA. I was just trying to make sure we had a comprehensive list of what was out there.
And did that number you add up, did that include the furnace?
it did, all the furnace.
And
So-
did it include the solar system for
It did.
water?
The 87,314, yep.
Wow.
Now, but, you know, we don't have numbers for the lighting upgrade to LED.
Yeah.
We don't have numbers for the, but
Yeah, I'm gonna look for the next meeting.
it sounds to me that if we can find the furnace, if we can split some of that. And even if the radio read, if the utility wants to help pay, we can split some of that or split some of that. The solar up top, the
What was your
87.
figure, Tim?
Right now I got 347. 347,000.
Yeah.
And that's with the furnace all in. I mean, there's, and the 50,000, I mean, there's some pretty low, there's some things that we could move around. Cause all of this needs to be, like you said, we need to have this committed by the end of the year.
Yeah. The money.
So we got 211 that we want to
Commit.
thank you.
So let's go to the library furnace for a moment. Do someone want to throw out a number that we could present to the library board as, would you be willing to pay a portion of it? If that is a route you want to take, because otherwise we're just gonna dance around this, so.
Third. They'll pay a third?
That's what, I was thinking 75% or something like that, that we would pay. Or.
I had us 165, so I think it sounds like we're all in the, not exact, but it's somewhere in that.
Closer.
Yeah, we're paying over half.
It has to be 82, so yeah.
Right, I was thinking, so we would be generous to say, we're gonna pay more than half, however, we would love it if you would. Finish out, so a third or a quarter.
50, 55 is about 55.
It's more than that, but.
So, no, I'm just saying 55 is a third, right, ish.
Oh, 55, so yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they pay 55, we pay 110.
And know that you have capital surplus, I mean, that is a fine application for those funds also, if ARPA doesn't, you know, rise to the top for the other things you're considering, that's why we're careful and have that money tucked away.
Well, did we ever find out, when was the last furnace built? This one,
Probably 2006, I guess, when the building was done.
so we got 18 years out of it,
I had to verify that, but I'm pretty sure.
so it's not really the one too expensive, basically, for all intents and purposes, yes.
And then it becomes more efficient, we should save some yearly.
Yeah.
That's true on the library budget, they will get that. Savings. So, more reason to say, hey, maybe they won't pitch in. Yeah, they're not.
We pay all the-
city,
We pay all the operating, yeah,
Oh,
we pay all the operating costs.
Oh, okay.
Nice try, Kenny, that was good.
You just upped our share of payment.
Yeah, sorry.
So is 1/3, is that a number that people are?
Sure.
Yes.
Ask the library board, otherwise, you know,
So they would come up with 55, we come up with 110.
if it's a third means it's gonna be a third of whatever it costs, so we don't.
Right.
You're right, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get the number down to 210,
And if I take 55 off this number, and then I take the comp plan of 50 off this number, we're at 242.
And the sidewalks off the number.
The sidewalks are off the number, yes. So we need to find another
We don't have
30.
any cost due from the lighting upgrade, so.
We don't, you're right.
That I'd like to see that done, because that's gonna save us all money.
Completely, yeah.
And that's,
Completely agree. But is utilities, can we ask for some kind of split for that 87 and the 25?
Sure.
And if we find a split there, I don't know what that split is, but if there's a split, I think we could probably get 30 out of those two things. Right, we take 30 out of our side,
Yeah,
and
but
now we're
it's,
down to 211.
You know, I don't know, now we're gonna talk about rating.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, it's not like, I mean, doesn't that now become a taxpayer thing?
It's not like we have. You know,
Funds.
basically charge for
Right,
everything. So
That's
it's
what I
gonna
was
be
thinking.
reflected back and,
yeah,
you know, some things, is this one of those things we can raise rates on or can't? Which is the one we can't raise rates on? Do we say that?
oh, water.
Water.
Right now, we have to do a full rate study before you can change
Okay.
rates. I mean, the comprehensive plan, you know, if we didn't have ARPA funds, that would just be in your budget.
exactly. I don't like going back to utility because then you gotta think about, are we gonna expend this to on their water bills or rate bills?
Right, and
But you're right, that comprehensive.
that's a high radar thing. The rates, you know, like having to
Oh, yeah,
increase rates draws a lot of attention.
So then the fact is of the stuff we still have on here, assuming I don't have any idea what LEDs cost, no idea. But if I say 10 grand, that means we gotta come up with $40,000 to cut out of this ARPA paper. To get to our 211.
And I think maybe what is, unless we've taken two things off, am I correct? The sidewalks are out?
Sidewalks
And
are
the
out.
electric vehicle, DPW, charging station, DPW, those are gone, right?
Those are gone.
And so the two things that, how about if we go, if there's nothing else you wanna take off the list, we go and do the research on the item, the library book return and lighting as quickly as we can get that.
Yes.
Yes.
And then meet again,
right.
and I think then maybe, and by that time we'll be in the first draft of the budget, you'll know, is there a chance the comprehensive master plan would fit into this year's budget?
Correct.
And then I think that would give you,
And we'll know if the furnace really was, because that was sort of
yeah, we should investigate.
you're not.
We should start getting some better
And then
information.
do you bring it up at the library meeting or do you talk to Beth?
I'll make sure Beth knows, but I think.
I was
the rest,
also
so,
gonna, cause
yeah.
I promised her I'd let her know discussion after tonight's meeting, cause she wasn't here.
But they're not gonna be now until October.
But we could have a special meeting as well, I mean, we did recently.
We'll only have one meeting prior to the, well, it's.
Yeah.
Or hold another meeting if we don't get it done.
Right, I don't know that this is all gonna be done by in 2 weeks.
But the lighting upgrades, that's the thing, that'll take us some time, because someone's got to look at the buildings and figure that out, so.
Well, I just think that we can get more information, but then I don't think we'll have enough information
To get back.
before.
Yeah.
But we should at least have a pretty good idea of what the furnace costs
Yeah, the best number we had.
in 2 weeks.
And Beth might have a good feel already. From
She may have
her
done,
board,
This is-
well, from her board, about what she.
Well, she could have, one earlier said that he may just likely say, I have no idea what for.
She may say that, I'm just saying. She may have an idea.
We may have an idea what the pavilion.
She may have a concept.
Yeah, hopefully the next meeting we'll have
Well, more information
yeah.
there.
That's our goal.
Big, oh, God.
And tell people that I'm 400 grand,
Anything else?
No, vote too often and everything else.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else have anything else on the, financial capital improvement plan? Otherwise, we will move on to mayor, all the and staff reports. Got a couple things here. Got Friday night market coming up this week. Thursday night is the Chamber of Commerce dinner out at Coachman's at 5:30. And then pork chops. On the 27th. And I don't know if Chief wanted to throw this out, but it's National Nursing Week.
It is National Neonatal Intensive Care Nurses.
Oh, I'm wondering if all that.
Oh.
My wife's a NICU nurse.
And congratulations to Steve Stricker, three-peated. It was Stanford Invitational. And he's the first golfer to three-peat a tournament in both the PGA and the Champions Tour. Wow.
Nice.
Anybody else have anything? Okay. We can make that motion to adjourn if anybody wants to get out of here. I'll second.
I'll second.
So second adjourn, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
You want me to go?